Hey, hi, hello! This is Sleuthy Teacher, and surprise! This is the start of Sleuthy Teacher Grades, the series where I break down each Nancy Drew game and review it for a final grade. I am so excited to start this series to give my insights and opinions on all of the games in the series that I love so much. I'm sure I'm going to have some hot takes throughout this series, but hey, that is a part of the fun. Also, please don't hold them against me. Obviously, huge spoiler alert warning. Today I'm going to be talking about all aspects of Stay Tuned for Danger, so if you haven't played the game or watched a playthrough, maybe think about sitting this one out. Or you can check out my playthrough of Stay Tuned for Danger before you watch this. But now that that's all out of the way, let's hop in and take a closer look at Nancy Drew, Stay Tuned for Danger. Let's do it. So first, we're going to dive in and take a look at the premise of this game. Stay Tuned for Danger opens with a letter to Bess explaining that Nancy has been called directly from her last case, Secrets Can Kill, to fly to New York to help Maddie Jensen, a famous and highly regarded soap opera actress who's worried about threats that her co-star Rick Arlen has been receiving. Nancy arrives in New York and begins meeting various suspects who work in and adjacent to the soap opera TV business. The threats start escalating shortly after Nancy arrives, from a falling Klieg light that almost lands on Rick during filming, to a literal explosive device that is left in his dressing room. Nancy also manages to snag the attention of the culprit and receives her own threatening note stating that she needs to return to River Heights now or else. Nevertheless, our fearless sleuth continues to investigate and eventually comes face to face with the culprit in one of the most dramatic culprit reveals in Nancy Drew history. I love the premise of this game. It has the perfect amount of drama that you'd expect from characters that work in the soap opera industry, and the threats that are paced throughout the game do a really great job of building tension and suspense. So with all of that in mind, I give Stay Tuned for Danger the premise grade of an A. So now let's take a closer look at the various settings and atmospheres within the game. Stay Tuned for Danger has three main locations that you can go and visit: Maddie's apartment, Worldwide Broadcasting Studios, and the Powers Talent Office. I'm going to break these locations down and talk a little bit about each of them, starting, obviously, with Maddie's apartment. I love this location. It very much gives me Aunt Eloise's house in Secrets Can Kill vibes, which makes sense since Maddie is renting it from Nancy's aunt. I love the consistency of the vibe with this setting and her aunt's house, and it makes it very believable that they're owned by the same person. I love that they took the time to provide details that gave continuity between the two locations. I think that the very clearly photoshopped pictures throughout the apartment are cheesy, but I think it also adds a Gouda amount of charm to the space. See what I did there? Anyway, thanks to the one person that laughed at that joke. There are a lot of little details that you can find in Maddie's apartment that are not necessary to read in order to progress the game, but they do provide a lot of backstory for Maddie and Rick's relationship, as well as the rising tensions going on at Worldwide due to Rick contemplating leaving the show for a movie career. This space also has a really nice day-night cycle, with a shift in music, lighting, and the addition of a lit fireplace in the evening. I think we have to give credit where credit is due. HerInteractive did a fantastic job at having a solid day-night cycle already in Game 2. I hear a lot of people absolutely praise Ghost Dogs of Moonlight for its day and night cycle, but if we're going to praise Ghost Dogs, then I also think Stay Tuned for Danger needs to get some props handed to it as well. Overall, I really enjoy the space. It is very cozy, and I absolutely love exploring this area. Next up, we're going to take a look at Worldwide Broadcasting. Now, this is an absolutely huge location with a plethora of spaces to us explore, so we're going to take a look at each one that we're able to explore and dive into it a little bit. Now, Worldwide Broadcasting is the home of the soap opera Light of Our Love, And the first location that you enter when you go here is the lobby. Now, the lobby is where you must sign in every time you enter the space, and there is a little storytelling clue that you can take a look at, which is the magazines with the letters cut out. We later see that Rick received threats that were written with cutout magazine letters, ransom note style. The lobby is also where we can find Ralph Gardino, the studio's security guard. I love this space. I think that the large windows with the natural lighting in here is a really nice touch. And despite the fact that it is kind of corny, I really like the waiting music that we hear in this space. I think it makes it very believable, and it is something that we would hear if we were actually in this location outside of the game in real life. Now let's take a look at the other setting that is tied to Maddie. We're also able to explore her dressing room in this game. Now, this is an area that we can explore while we're at the studio when Maddie is not in this room. When Maddie is in this room, we are only able to talk to her. If we want to explore, we either have to wait for Maddie to leave or we have to break in when it is nighttime. This space holds a very important clue to an explosive puzzle later in the game, as well as a mysterious French love note, a destroyed tube of lipstick, and a ripped up note that we can put back together. Next to Maddie's dressing room, we have the dressing room of the one, the only Rick Arlen. So here we can actually visit with Rick himself, as well as take a look at the various threats that Rick has been receiving. This area is super important to the progression of the story in-game, and I love all the little details that were provided for us to explore. From the cutout notes, the box of chocolates with the ominous, loathing note, to the sinister typewritten notes. This area is also where we eventually have to defuse an explosive device to save Rick, and literally everyone else in Worldwide Broadcasting Studios. I love all the little details that were provided in this space. I love the music in this space and how it sounds kind of sleazy, which fits in with Rick's personality, if I'm being honest. And I love that we were able to actually read each of the notes when we were in this space versus being able to just hear about them when characters are having conversations about them. I think that was a really nice touch, and at least for me, it is greatly appreciated. I also really like how you're able to draw a very defined line and be able to spot the difference between the ransom type notes with the cut out letters to the typewritten notes. And I think that was a really nice piece of storytelling that they did throughout the game, where if you're not paying attention to it, you might come to the conclusion that, okay, all of these notes are just written by the culprit, straight across the board. He read them all. But if you look at them closer, it is possible to deduce that the notes are written by different people. And I do think that that is a really cool piece of storytelling that they did, that nothing is drawn attention to. They don't come right out and explain that. That's something as the player that you need to dig into. And like I said, I really do appreciate that bit of storytelling in game. So next we're going to dive in to the Worldwide Broadcasting prop room. Now this is where we can find old Millie Strathorn. Once we're hired on as an extra WWV, we are able to explore the prop room and gather some key tools that are needed to progress the game. Here we can find all the important wire cutters that are necessary to defuse the explosive in Rick's dressing room, the Tower of Hanoi puzzle, a bunch of Easter eggs, both for HerInteractive, but also for future games, especially like Curse of Blackmore Manor. No matter how many times I played this, it wasn't until this last playthrough that I noticed just how many hints and clues and Easter eggs that they had in this game for Curse of Blackmore Manor. I thought that was really interesting, seeing as that game doesn't come until quite a bit later in this series. So anyway, I digress. I thought that was really interesting. Also in this space, we can find an old typewriter where Nancy's notes that it drops its Y, just like the typewritten threats that Rick receives. This is important to notice and note because we are not able to openly explore this space until we are hired on as an employee at Worldwide Broadcasting, meaning that whoever is sending Rick these typewritten notes must be an employee at Worldwide, because otherwise Millie would not give them access to this space. So once again, it's a very, very subtle storytelling element that they have in this game, but I do think it is really important. We're also able to access a locked up portion of this space via a hidden hydraulic lift that allows us to gather a key piece of evidence. This space is also a bit tedious to find everything needed to progress in the game, especially if you're playing it for the first time without hints. There's a lot of things that you can look at that are completely irrelevant to the case, and you look at it for the sake of looking at it. There really isn't anything you can do with it. But as a theater nerd, I do love how believable this space is for a prop room. If anything, this space has got to be the cleanest prop room I have ever seen. But I enjoy it all the same. Next, we're going to move on to Lillian's office. Lillian's office is a space that we can access towards the end of the game, where we're able to make the discovery that she sent the box of nasty chocolates to Rick, in addition to collecting evidence needed to make a timeline of the events that have been taking place regarding the threats towards Rick. Here we can also discover that Rick and Lillian dated, and she was not happy at all when he kicked her to the curb. This space is very information heavy, with a lot of details and tasks that need to be completed in order to finish the game. Now, one element in this space that I really do enjoy is the computer. We need to find Millie's password in the prop room, and then we need to use it in the computer in here to look up information on Owen Spader, and also to find the password for an area in the soundstage portion of the game. I really like how you have to use the computer to find the password and then locate the codex in this room so that you know what keys you have to press in order to complete the Pigpen code. When I was a kid, it took me forever to find that key, but I will never forget that rush of adrenaline the first time that I found it, and it suddenly made sense exactly what I needed to do. I thought that was absolutely wonderful, and that adrenaline rush is what got me hooked on this series. And last but not least, we have the biggest area in Worldwide Broadcasting Studios, and that is the set of Light of Our Love on the soundstage. Here we get to see a cutscene where Rick and Maddie are filming that is cut short by the fallen Klieg light that I mentioned in the premise of the game. Here we can also explore the set, as well as the behind-the-scenes areas and the catwalk, where you can find an important clue if you aren't afraid of heights. I didn't realize that you actually don't have to go up into the catwalk in order to complete the game. That is completely optional. I myself always choose to do it because it is a nice little bit of, once again, storytelling if you go up there and you're able to make the connection from what you find up there, with that being the ripped piece of shirt that was left behind when the culprit sabotaged the Klieg light. This is also the location where the culprit is revealed and the final puzzle of the game takes place. I absolutely love this space. I think it is very comical that the set itself also very much has the Aunt Eloise vibe. So I don't know if Aunt Eloise gave up her day job as a high school librarian and decided to go into set design. Hey, maybe that's how she can afford the apartment so close to Central Park in New York City. I don't know if that's actually the case, but it is quite compelling. And lastly, our final setting in the game that we can explore is the Powers Talent Office. Now, I think that HerInteractive did a phenomenal job at storytelling in this space. As soon as you walk in, you can tell that business is not going great for this company. The derelict, drab, and dingy space does the storytelling fantastically without making the player read anything in the room. Here we can find a check from Maddie as a loan to Dwayne to help him as his space is being foreclosed on, as well as a book of French love phrases which allows the player to infer that the love note found in Maddie's dressing room was written by Dwayne to Maddie. Oh, how the love drama continues! This space is also where we can learn more about Owen Spader, a member of the behind-the-scenes crew that has been in studio on every occasion that something happened to Rick. Like I said, I absolutely love this space. I think if I could change one little piece that was in this space, I would love some sort of hint, other than the fact that Owen Spader is an anagram for Dwayne Powers. It would have been nice to have some other larger clue that connects Dwayne to Owen and them being the same person. But that also could just be me being nitpicky. Okay, well, I think that covers all the atmospheres and environments in this game, so now let's grade it. With everything in mind that I just talked about, the rich storytelling that is done through the atmospheres and setting in this game, I have to give Stay Tuned for Danger the setting score of an A. In fact, I was really back and forth on whether or not this game deserved a superior for setting, but there was something about it that held me back. I couldn't justify giving this space a superior grade. I'm not quite sure what it was that stopped me, even as I'm recording right now and I'm trying to rack my brain for it. I can't remember what it was. It was just something that I felt strongly, this has to be an A. Now let's take a look at the music category. I've heard a lot of differing opinions on the music for Stay Tuned for Danger. You either love it or you don't. I happen to fall into the love it category for this game. The music does a fantastic job of setting the overall tone of the game, from the generic waiting room music that can be heard throughout the worldwide broadcasting studios, to the suspenseful music when you're in Dwayne's office, to the catchy music that can be heard on the map screen and in Maddie's home, to the sleazy music that you can hear when you're in Rick's dressing room, and finally, the absolutely amazingly atmospheric and slightly terrifying danger track that plays when you're doing the final puzzle after the culprit confrontation. This game also has defined music that you hear at day and night, which is great for setting defined tones throughout the game. Once again, giving credit where credit is due, HerInteractive had already figured out a pretty fantastic way of setting up defined day and night, not only through graphics, but also through the music and the sound qualities that we hear, and the differences between the day and night tracks throughout the game. I personally absolutely love the music in Stay Tuned for Danger, and I have to give it a grade of an A. I love listening to it, and there are quite a few songs that I hold close to my heart. In fact, in my classroom, it's a pretty good chance that you're going to hear the soundtrack for Stay Tuned for Danger play at least twice a week, whether I am prepping or grading papers, or even as background music as my mini sleuths are working. This is one of my go-to tracks, and if it's one that I am seeking out on a relatively regular basis, of course it is going to have to rank high for me. So obviously, I think this is a very well-deserved A. Now we're going to take a look at the characters category, starting with William Pappas. William Pappas is the producer of Light of Our Love. I strongly believe that he should have been an in-game character instead of overhearing conversations from outside his office and a phone conversation we're able to have with him later in the game. We overhear that Pappas is furious with Rick for potentially breaking his contract with the studio to pursue a career in films. And Pappas is under additional pressure due to a decrease in ratings over the past 3 seasons of Light of Our Love. He has a slightly compelling motive. If you won't work for me, you won't work for anybody. Up next, we have Ralph Gardino, the security guard at the front desk of Worldwide Broadcasting. I love Ralph. I think he's a lot of fun. I do find it kind of comical that his last name is Guardino and he's a security guard. I don't know if it was intentional that they put the word guard in his last name, but I find it very comical and it does crack me up. Anyway, Ralph controls everyone that enters the building, and admittedly, If he wasn't a part of apprehending the suspect at the end of the game, it wouldn't make sense for him to be an in-game character. Don't get me wrong, like I said, I absolutely love Ralph, and I think his accent is great. But if you're going to spend the time and money making him an in-game character, then give him a bigger part. I personally think it would have been so cool to have a puzzle with Ralph where you had to comb through security footage, and that's how we find the footage of Dwayne wandering the halls as Owen Spader. I think that would have been a lot cooler to come across the footage that way versus just finding the tape in the production studio. But maybe that's just my opinion. Up next on our list, we have Maddie Jensen. She's a highly regarded soap opera actress, best known for her role as Serena Livingston on Light of Our Love. She's also the person that reached out to Nancy for help investigating the threats against Rick. In fact, she and Rick dated for a while in the past, and we can find evidence that she's still in love with him in-game. Most of the time that we visit with her, she leaves right after. And while that is helpful to allow us to snoop in spaces, I do find it pretty comical that she's always having to leave a space after talking with Nancy. Could it be that Nancy just put too many onions on her sandwich before she went to talk with Maddie? Maybe. All I know is that whenever Nancy leaves a room, Maddie leaves shortly after. Anyway, in comparison with some of the larger-than-life personalities of the other in-game characters, Maddie's personality is pretty mild, and I would have loved to see her be more dramatic about everything happening with Rick. I mean, you're a soap opera star. Give me drama, give me passion, give me something, please. But I digress. Old Millie Strathorn is the eccentric but lovable worldwide broadcasting studio founder who is nuttier than a jar of peanut butter in the absolute best way. She has a lot of great quotable one-liners, from "Don't take any wooden nickels, young lady," to the classic "Have a good day!" Anyway, her distaste for Rory Danner makes her a reasonable, although maybe not quite believable, suspect. Even though most of the conversation with her are absolutely optional, I love getting to visit with her, and she is a lot of fun. Next, we have the director of Light of Our Love and another former girlfriend of Rick Arlen, Lillian Weiss. Lillian's anger management problems make her one of my favorite characters to talk to. Her hostility is a great contrast to personalities of other suspects, as well as making her an extremely believable suspect. In fact, we find out that she was the person that sent Rick the box of nasty chocolates, after finding the suppressive phone number and a rough copy of the poem she sent with them. We enter the culprit reveal with Lillian after she calls Nancy, asking her to meet in the studio at night. Once there, we learn that Lillian was also investigating and received her own typewritten threat when she was getting too close to discovering the real culprit. In fact, the first time I played this game, I thought she was the culprit, and I do think she would have made a very compelling culprit, but I do think that who actually did it was absolutely fantastic. Next, we have the highly regarded actor, heartthrob, and star of Light of Our Love, best known for his role as Rory Danner, the one and only Rick Arlen. Rick has been receiving threats, but he hasn't been taking them seriously. Through our sleuthing, we discover that the first threatening notes, which were the notes written ransom note style with the cutout magazine letters, were actually written by Rick himself, as a way to drum up publicity as he makes his move out of the soap opera game and into the film world. The name B.T. Kaiser that's on each of the notes is an anagram for Rick's actual last name, Arbertusky. Rick is absolutely in love with himself, and you can often find him fixing his hair when you enter his dressing room. I love how outrageous Rick is, and he's a delight to talk to. I find it super compelling that he was the author of the first set of letters, and I wish that it would have been a bigger plot point for the player to discover. Finally, we have my favorite character, Dwayne Powers, the talent agent and owner of Powers Talent, which is the company that hires Nancy as an extra after Lillian takes her studio pass. Dwayne's range throughout the game is, in my opinion, fantastic. He starts the game as a very professional, if not slightly overworked, agent that is doing Maddie a favor by hiring her friend Nancy. As the game progresses, we learn that Dwayne and Rick do not get along, and eventually we have a very telling phone conversation with him where he gets quite hostile and angry when discussing Rick and his success. Dwayne's rage reaches its peak when he is revealed to be the culprit, and he is almost completely unhinged as he confronts Nancy and Lillian in the studio. Oh, that was a lot of characters. With all of that in mind, I absolutely cannot justify giving this game a rank lower than an A. If we would have gotten Pappas as an in-game character, I would have had no problems giving Stay Tuned for Danger a superior grade. But alas, that was not the case. The characters in this game are absolutely fantastic. There's a great range of personalities, and most of the characters are an absolute delight to talk to. Next, let's take a look at the puzzles category. Oh, puzzles. Puzzles. Puzzles is the category that really holds this game back. As the second game in the series, Her still hadn't quite figured out its formula for a successful game, and the puzzles were really lacking in this game like it was with Secrets Can Kill. Overall, I can think of 5 puzzles in this game, and only 4 of them are needed to actually complete the game. There's the torn note in Maddie's dressing room, a Tower of Annoy puzzle in the prop room, defusing the explosive in Rick's dressing room, opening the production room doors, which I guess you can consider that a puzzle, in the soundstage area. I suppose you could actually consider the trapdoor puzzle a puzzle. Maybe? I don't know. That one's debatable to me. And last but not least, you have the endgame puzzle as well, where you're trying to get the stage doors open after pulling the fire alarm. This game includes a lot of brain teasers, just like Secrets Can Kill, which are fine, and they're a fun challenge, but they aren't necessary to complete the game. I would have rather had less brain teasers and a few more puzzles in the game. So because of all of that, as much as it hurts me to give this game a low grade because I love it so much, I cannot justify giving puzzles a grade other than a D, or maybe even an F, but I'm giving it a D because at least it did give us some puzzles. The puzzles that we get are fine, but they're definitely lacking, especially when we compare them to other games in the series. We're down to our last couple of categories now. Let's take a look at culprit. I already talked a bit about why I think the culprit in this game is amazing, but I'm going to expand on a couple of things. For starters, I love that you can accuse almost any character of being the culprit before the big reveal. It really helps make the player think that their theory on who did it could be correct, and I love the fact that you can accuse Lillian to her face that you think she is the culprit. It's so fantastic. And this is not a option in a game again until the captive curse. So it took quite a while for us to get this kind of mechanic in game again. I think it was really quite brilliant to keep Dwayne in shadow for a lot of the culprit confrontation. A lot of times we would consider obscuring the view of a character to be a means of saving on animation, but in this case it works incredibly well. By keeping Dwayne in shadow, he comes across as more menacing, and it, I think, allowed the voice actor more creative freedom to really make Dwayne as dramatic and slightly insane as possible. Dwayne also has a very compelling motive as the culprit. He despises Rick after watching him become so successful and achieving everything that Dwayne wanted for himself. From everything to a successful career to even a relationship with Maddie. I could go on forever about why Dwayne is a fantastic culprit, and for that reason, I have to give Stay Tuned for Danger a culprit grade of superior. It's very well deserved and I think quite justified. Like I said, I think Dwayne was a fantastic culprit, and this is one of the stronger culprit reveals in the entire Nancy Drew series, at least in my opinion. And finally, we have the ending. So the game comes to an end with Nancy unlocking the security doors and Ralph coming in to body slam Dwayne in the nick of time, throwing him to the ground, slapping the handcuffs on him, and telling Nancy to forget about it. Classic. Anyway, in the endgame letter, we find out that Dwayne is awaiting trial and has publicly apologized. Lillian has moved out to California and is directing her first film, and Maddie and Rick have tied the knot as Serena and Rory. Overall, the game is wrapped up really nicely. If you read through all of the clues throughout the game, there aren't many big plot holes that leave us wondering what happened. I do wish that we would have gotten more closure for some of the characters. Is William Pappas still stressed out? Did Light of Our Love's ratings go up after everything was said and done? Did Millie finally warm up to Rory Danner and quit trying to kill him off the show? What about Maddie and Rick? Not just their characters. Is Rick less of a sleazeball? Did Maddie tell her mom to calm down and quit being so controlling? What about Ralph? Did he get a promotion after apprehending the culprit? These are the questions that keep me up at night. I need more information. Anyway, with all that being said, I am giving the ending a B grade. It was great, but I need more. So now let's get into the scores and figure out what Stay Tuned for Danger's final grade is going to be. A quick recap of the grades are as follows. For game premise, it received the grade of an A. Setting, it also received an A. Music, it received another A. And characters, it received a very well-deserved A. Puzzles was the low point of the game. It got the grade of a D. Culprits was its, I believe, strongest category with a superior grade. And last but not least, we have an ending score of a B. So now let's get into what these grades mean and what we're going to do about them. So how I have formulated my overall grade is that all letter grades are equal to a numerical value. So a superior is equal to 10 points, an A is worth 9 points, a B is worth 8 points, a C is worth 7 points, a D is worth 6 points, and an F is worth 5 points. With 7 criteria points and a maximum value of 9 for each criteria point, the score will be out of 63 points. To give superior grades the power that they so rightfully deserve, an S is considered 1 point above a perfect score, which is why it's valued at a 10. Once we add up all the scores, Stay Tuned for Danger has a whopping 60 out of 63 points, for a final percentage of 95%, which puts it solidly in the A category. So there we have it. First on the official scoreboard is Stay Tuned for Danger at 95%. Not too shabby for the second game in the series. Now I want to know, what grades would you give Stay Tuned for Danger? Let me know in the comments below. I cannot wait to see what your opinions are. Like and subscribe to the video to stay up to date on video releases, and don't forget to hit that notification bell if you'd like to be the first to know anytime a new video drops. I hope you join me next week as I play through Message in the Haunted Mansion with the graded video posted the following Friday. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay sleuthy!